Hello, and welcome back to the Delve podcast. Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago offers individual, couples, group, and family therapy services. We have immediate options for low-cost therapy, and you can find us at delvepsych.com. That's DELVEPSYCH.com. And also subscribe to our Substack. Same spelling, delvepsych.substack.com. I'm Allie. I'm a staff therapist still in training here at Delve Psych.
I am Adam. I am the executive and clinical director at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago, the founder, owner, whatever. And today we have with us a guest, also a staff therapist at Delve Psychotherapy of Chicago, Colleen Paul. Colleen has a master's degree from Northwestern University's Clinical Mental Health Counseling program. She is a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Illinois, a certified clinical trauma professional, and she likes to study cults. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. I'm excited to be here.
So what are we doing today?
So today we are talking about the Before trilogy. My boyfriend is a bit of a film nerd, and so he had me watch this film trilogy by director Richard Linklater. And so the first film, I believe, came out in like 93, 94, and then the second film didn't come out until 10 years later, 2004, and then the third not till 2014. So there's 10 years in between each film, and I just found the relationship between the two characters so compelling. And I found out that Colleen, my colleague here, she also loves the series. And so we thought we would get into it today and talk about it a little bit.
Yes, so good. I in my undergrad studied film, and so that was definitely something I was really passionate about as well. So hearing that your boyfriend was a film nerd, I was like, yes, but they're so good. I've seen them all a couple times. And truthfully, I just rewatched because I was like, ooh,
Yes.
I want to watch this. I just rewatched the first last night. So they're so good.
First of all, I didn't know you did film in your undergrad, and that's so amazing because of my background in the film industry. So that's really cool. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either, and I hired you. So, or perhaps I forgot this, but how did you make the pivot from film to counseling?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I always say it was my hobbies and extracurriculars during college that I really started to realize I liked and was, interested in the helping profession. I worked for Chicago Boys and Girls Club, so I was a tutor for young students in inner city schools. I did this program through DePaul called Peer Health Exchange, where again, we went into inner city schools and we taught things about sexual health, drugs and alcohol, healthy relationships, abusive relationships. So it was just in doing that I realized I really liked it. And then post-college, it was really hard for me, surprise, surprise, to find a job. I originally thought about being a film critic because I also love writing. But it's just so hard. It's so competitive. And so I just got into childcare and daycare. I loved working with kids and the families. And so that was kind of what sparked my interest in looking into counseling.
Wow. That's such a cool journey. And I love that we both sort of have like weird, unconventional like pivots into this profession. It's just like, it's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem like there's an adjacency to a lot of the creative arts and artistic professions and counseling. And I don't always know exactly what that is, but I wonder if you all have found in any way that it's affected the way that you operate, the way that you work as a therapist.
Well, first I have thoughts on, because I don't think it's maybe as like coincidental. I think that people that are in creative professions are more in tune with emotions and like, I don't know, empathy and just like human experience than maybe the average lay person. At least that's my theory on it. But I also think that it's like helped me in being a counselor, just like I was an actress back in the day. So I feel like, first of all, active listening is like the whole it's the whole shtick with being an actor, right? Like really listening and picking up on not just like what's being said, but like body language and how it's being said, nonverbals, and also like subtext. A lot of my, like when I would go through a script and like go through my dialogue as a character, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm saying, but what am I actually really saying underneath this? And so I feel like that's helped me kind of try to see the subtext and like what's the hidden thoughts and underneath what my clients are like actually saying. So yeah, that's how I feel like it's helped me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think too, film in a lot of ways, like counseling, breaks social norms. Like I think films can question a lot of like what's going on in current media and just the world and politics and everything in a way that I think a lot of other media sources, also television, but I think other media sources can't necessarily get away with it as much. And that was something that was so interesting to me when I was studying film, you know, from the dawn of film when it was first created to today. And I think our profession does that in a lot of ways. Like we break social norms, we break status quos, and we're kind of forced to question all lines of thinking and perspectives and experiences. And so not even as you were saying all that, like, I don't think I've ever really made that connection, but yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective of being an actress and having to think about that with characters and everything, but also how that shows up just in viewing film and viewing our profession. I don't know if that makes sense, but that was kind of
It
just
does. It does.
Yeah.
I'm loving that framing of the breaking of social norms, because the therapeutic relationship itself is something of a broken social norm. It is a weird relationship to have with another person. It's this one directional relationship where I get to know a lot about you and you get to know very, very little about me. These brief little windows into my life. That's weird. And I find that that's something that clients really do sort of grow into, but have to adjust to some degree. You're important to me, but in a very odd way that is different than everything else that I've ever experienced.
Yeah. Gosh, so I feel like what I loved specifically about this trilogy was just like the realism in it. There's most of the film consists of just these really long takes of just conversation. Like there's not like a whole bunch of plot and twists and turns and like big circumstances and events that happen. It's literally just these, for the most of the films, it's just these two people getting to know each other and like asking deep questions and going back and forth and pondering the meaning of life and getting to know each other in that way, which I feel like is, especially like now in today's day and age, like I feel like it's a little bit foreign, just like having these two people just really engage in like deep conversation without like checking their phone every 5 minutes or like just that amount and level of connection was so compelling, and I wasn't expecting it because I'm usually not the person that likes the slice of life kind of films. I don't know if those are your jam, Colleen, but I tend to like a plot, right? And so I was like, oh, I don't know if I'll like these, but I found myself just really enthralled by their conversation and just wanting to know what each person was going to say next and where it was going to go.
Totally. I was even thinking last night that nowadays, the way that they meet, Adam, just for some clarity, is that it starts with them on a train and they're going through Europe and they're not even sitting by each other. But there's a German couple next to the actress in the film, the main female character, and they start arguing. And so she switches seats to sit next to who is going to be, you know, the main male character. And he starts up a conversation with her. She's reading a book, he's reading a book, and he's like, hey, do you know what they're fighting about? And I was even joking with my sister, texting her last night. I was like, if somebody talks to me when I'm trying to read a book when I'm traveling, I'd be like, leave me alone. I was like, maybe this is an issue. Like nowadays, is that something that would happen? Because we're just so immersed in our phones or books or whatever when we're traveling. Like it's such a digital, non-social world now. So I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the way they meet is like so organic, and like you said, like today I feel like we're so in our own, like, I don't know, in our own little bubbles, more than, I don't know, ever before. I feel like just not connecting like with people. Like even the way we date today is so just like, oh, I get to choose, like in my own time, I will swipe on my own time, and like there's not as much of like, let's meet in the bar. Like some people do still, but like what you said, if I was like out at a bar and like a guy just came up to me to like strike up random conversation, I'd feel like weird. I don't know. Isn't that strange? Like I feel like
get away from me. No, but it is so good. And a lot of the film, I was trying to remember because I haven't seen Before Sunset, the second one, in a really long time. I was saying to Adam yesterday, I was like, I think it's almost done in real time. Like it's filmed, you know, in an hour and 25 minutes or whatever. And so without any cuts or, you know, I couldn't remember though, because it's been a long time, but they both kind of mimic that. Before Midnight is a little bit different with the time.
Yeah.
But the first two, it really just feels like you're walking with them. And even the end of Before Sunrise, you get to see all the little parts of the city that they've had these really beautiful conversations in. That's just how the movie ends, where it's showing the shot in the alleyway where they were talking about love and the first time they've been in love, the Ferris wheel where they first kiss. And yeah, it's just these little like alleyways and corners that don't really hold any significance, but for them, those are such big, private, significant moments for them. It's just so good. Those movies are so good.
Yeah. Well, I love that idea. Like, go ahead, Adam.
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask a question. Firstly, I was going to clarify. I haven't seen this movie yet, but y'all's hard sell has been wonderful. But I guess I'm wondering what it is about this film in particular, these films together, that feels so enrapturing. Like, what did they do that kind of captured the essence of humanity well enough that you're like, yes, that's real. It's so real that I'm hooked, and I need to watch this. You all need to watch this. Everybody needs to see this, because this is a wonderful depiction of humanity, I think, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that it's not trying to show this like fairy tale love story that's like, I don't know, unrealistic or sugar-coated. It's the conversations that they're having are very real. It's like as if you were to be plopped into just two actual real life humans just having a conversation and just like witnessing it. Versus like this like epic love story that's like, but it is an epic love story because it's so like just real, and the conversations that they're having are actually like they're not like surface level conversations. They're like deep conversations, and they're asking like questions about like meaning of life and like spirituality, and like even just like the first time that I believe in the first movie, they even ask about like their past loves, like, and get into that just like the first time that they're talking together. Whereas I feel like a lot of times in real life, a lot of people like don't ask a lot of those like deep questions, or they're too afraid to, or it takes them a long time to like open up and get that vulnerable. Whereas like these two people just like go there with each other.
Yeah. And the characters both kind of agree this is going to be our one and only night. And so I think there is something that allows that freedom of asking the scary, deep questions, because it's like, all right, you live in America, I live in France. There's no way that we're ever going to make this work as an actual real life relationship. So let's just get deep. Let's get into the nitty gritty. And I totally agree with everything you're saying. It's just the conversations feel so raw. Like there are some moments where you're almost like, ooh, am I allowed to be here? And a lot of that too is in scenes where they're not talking. There's such a good scene in the first one where they go into a little private listening booth at a record store, and it's a really romantic record that's on. Yeah, if you remember it. And every set, like the camera's right on them. Just literally all you can see is both of their faces, and they just keep catching little stolen glances at one another. And it's so romantic, like, because they haven't kissed yet, they haven't touched or anything, but you can just feel the tension.
Yes.
And what I love about the movies too is that you'll just catch, at least in the first one, I can't remember if they do this as much in the second two, but they'll show little snippets of the environment and zoom in on just other random groups of people talking. So it'll be like a German couple at the bar talking about something. It'll be like American guy with a group of friends complaining about the service. I love how much they make Americans look terrible. I'm like, yeah. But I love that too, because it's like, yeah, these are just the people that we've chosen to follow in this film are just random 2 people out of billions of people. And we're seeing just how significant all these other, or just these other snippets of conversations in different areas of life and different cultures. It's so well done.
Yeah. Oh, I love what because thank you for reminding me about that scene of them in the record booth. Because like, there's just so much that's said, again, like subtext and like in the nonverbals of like the tension and them wanting to kiss and like, who's going to make the first move? Who's not? In the second one, some of my favorite scenes are the ones where, how do I say this without like spoiling too much, I guess? So basically in between the first one and the second one, there's been some disconnection between the 2 of them, I'll say. And they're now in circumstances where they can't necessarily be as romantic and flirty with each other in this as they were in the first one. And so there's moments where both the characters at one point or another like reach out for each other and then like pull back. And I just feel like, oh, that's like such good acting too. Like so much is said and like, oh God, I want so bad to touch you right now and I can't. And so I noticed Colleen character does it once and then Jess's character also does it once. So it's just so good. And then I love in the third one too. Again, try not to say too much spoiling, but in this vein of like, this isn't like this like sugar-coated love story. It's very real. And I will say it's not necessarily a fairy tale ending to these people's love stories. I think it's much more realistic. That makes it very human. Because, like, especially after, because this trilogy has been going on, I don't know, like 30 years, I guess. And so, like, I'm sure people would love to have this, like, big, grandiose, like, happily ever after ending between the 2 of them. And the reality of like what their love story might actually end up being like probably wouldn't be like this like happy ever after, like fireworks going off sort of ending. And I really appreciated that.
Yes, for sure. And I think that's what's so genius about it too, is that the first movie opens up with this random German couple arguing, and it kind of wraps up with the end of them arguing and having
that connection. Yeah.
So full circle. I always like to imagine that like another random pair of strangers is like listening in on their conversation, like near the water on like the Greek Sea, Sea, whatever one of those seas are out there. But yeah, I just think it's so good. And I think too, like what I love about the little quirks that are so charming when you're first dating. Like in the first movie, there's a scene where she gets her palm read by a random psychic on the street. And he kind of, I don't know. He kind of makes jests about her. He makes fun of it. He's like, oh, I'm sure she just like made that up. Like it was so condescending because she says something to him. Like he's still learning. The psychic Jesse. And later on, they're asking, like, what do you think would make us have our first fight? Like, what about me would annoy you? And she's like, well, I didn't like how you were with the psychic. That was so kind of annoying. And then you see those things that, again, in the first movie, those like annoyances and things are kind of something you chuckle at and are charming. But those are the things that they have actual arguments and fights about. It's like you're always questioning this and you're always trying to play devil's advocate. I think for her, she has like that French temper that he finds really charming in the first movie, but then he gets, anytime they're arguing, that's sort of like what he targets in those moments.
Oh my gosh, so interesting that you point that out. But I think it's so real and so true, like the little like stuff at the beginning of like dating someone, as you keep dating, those same things can be like exacerbated to things that are actually like, okay, now I'm annoyed by this.
Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, it's so cute in the beginning. And you're like, oh, I hate when you do that.
Yeah. What do you think, Aaron? Can we sell you on this trilogy?
I'm definitely going to watch at some point. I don't watch a whole lot of television, but I will definitely check it out at some point. I guess one of the questions I have for you both is if either of these two was a client of yours, what would you tell them? They're just telling you this story from their perspective. What would you tell them? And maybe at what point?
Well, are we seeing them like at the end of the last movie type thing? When are we seeing these characters?
How about after the first and before the second? Because it sounds like they had this magical experience. They're in your office telling you about it. How do you make sense of what they're doing? And maybe they're even planning to see this person a second time or something.
Well, that's part of it. Plan. Ooh,
that's hard. I was actually thinking, I was like, I think I would struggle if Jesse were my client. I actually think I would struggle with both of them, but for very different reasons. Again, I think Celine, I always meant Celine. She's just so unforgiving, and she's definitely one that hits the buttons. She knows what's going to make him upset, and she definitely goes for that. But then with him, I sort of agree with her in the moment with the psychic, with the palm reading. It's like, just enjoy the moment, just have fun, take things with a grain of salt. He always has to be a philosopher about every tiny thing, which for me would feel really exhausting. And so I think I would have to check myself as a therapist for both of them, because like both personally, I think I would have little counter transference triggers with them.
Yes.
But no, that's hard. That's something I have to think about. I don't know if something's coming up for you, Allie, but yeah, I just think that's the most that's what I'm noticing, is that I think I would struggle in certain environments with them or conversations.
Okay, so I will say, in between the first movie and the second movie, there is an element of disappointment in the trajectory of their relationship. And I think that would be something that could definitely be worked through in therapy, as far as like expectations not being met, and like excitement and like things that you've built up in your head not necessarily coming to fruition. And I guess what I would do is just, I guess, acknowledging like that disappointment and validating that sucks, that things didn't work out the way that you expected, and also just like appreciating what it was for what it was, like just trying to help them get to some level of acceptance of like, yes, this relationship didn't end up being what you thought it was going to be, but that doesn't negate like the beautiful experience that you like did have with that person, and maybe just like cherishing it for what it was.
I love that. Yeah. It doesn't take away any of the beauty and the deep connection that you had with this person.
Yeah.
And even, going off of that, then this isn't a spoiler, but he writes a story about it,
Yes.
and it's a really big novel that
Yes. Mhm.
yeah, and so he writes this book about this experience, and that almost makes me think, I'm like, wow, maybe he did go to therapy, like, or maybe his writing was his therapy, just to say, oh
Yeah.
man, I'm so disappointed by this expectation I had, and maybe there's something cathartic in being able to just reflect on that experience. And again, looking at just how exquisite that short amount of time was with this perfect stranger.
Yeah, and having that memory. I think this is actually a really good segue, because this is the scene where he said this quote that I really latched onto, because I think it's very pertinent in a lot of the work that we've been doing with clients lately. In his author talkback at the top of the second movie, Jesse says this quote. He says, happiness is in the doing, not in getting what you want. And I thought we could have a larger conversation and bring Adam in a little bit more in this conversation of like it being about the journey and the process and not necessarily the outcome.
Yeah, it's such a difficult thing, I think, for us humans and certainly our clients to grow more comfortable with, to even buy in the first place, because we want to get what we want. We want to have what we want, and it feels like, especially in a capitalistically structured society, we're sold this idea that if we get what we want, then we'll be happy. And so there is this kind of striving and desiring to just kind of acquire and acquire and acquire, despite the fact that psychology has over and over and over again demonstrated how much that doesn't work as a strategy. You'd think it would, and it's probably one of the biggest fights that I get from clients, is attempting to try to make this point. But I know another quote. I maybe need to look up the author of the quote, but it goes along the lines of "No heart suffers that goes in search of its dreams." How different would that quote be if it was "No heart suffers if it gets what it wants"? It's like, well, I mean, we know that's not true. We know it's not the case that just getting what you want is sufficient to have happiness. Otherwise, money would buy happiness. But by and large, I've had some clients fight me on this, but by and large, I think we all agree that money can't buy happiness. We do need a certain level of it to ensure that we aren't just actively suffering in poverty. And there are many, many social justice issues at play in ensuring that people that are having a difficult time with their own mental health are often also battling some deep economic issues, and perhaps those are getting even worse now. But that is different than the idea that just having money by itself, or just having things, or acquiring, or meeting all my goals, or getting the right person in my life, is so different. It's I think it's so clear that that isn't sufficient to generate a kind of a contented life overall.
Yeah. And that's so interesting. I feel, as you were saying, the piece about just, the society and capitalism and everything, I really do feel at such a young age, we're told it's sort of like a ladder. Okay, like on this rung, you go to school, and then after that, middle school, high school, college, career, marriage, kids. It's like all of these things that you're told, if you pass this stage, you will get to this stage, and that will make you happy. And then you'll get to the next stage, and that will make you happier. And not saying that people don't find fulfillment and happiness from that, but yeah, it is interesting how it's so, I don't know, structured for us in a way that it's like,
Yeah. And I think those moments in which you do acquire, you do like finish something, that is a moment, right? Like I graduated one afternoon and that was over. And there's all of the things that were in my life before and all the things that were in my life after were largely about the same. Sure, it opens up a couple of opportunities, but then you pretty quickly reorganize back into a fairly similar life with the same concerns that you had the day previous, and the same relationships, living in the same location, struggling with the same parent if you are. It's like you carry all of these things with you as we're starting to check off some of these boxes. And I think about the entirety of the human experience rather than just these sort of career or personal milestones. They're wonderful. It's great. But I've also said at many points in the past, the day that I get to check a goal off of my list should be a sad day. Because there's also this idea of like, if I can enjoy working on it, if I can enjoy being in the moment, if I can decide that my life is now and I need to live my life right now, not I get to begin living once I finish this thing,
Right.
but I live my life right now, then the day that I complete a goal is a sad day because I don't get to work on my thing anymore. I liked working on that. I figured out how to love the experience of working on it, and now I lose that.
Yeah. I feel like that's such a different way to look at it. And I could see that being a hard sell for clients because I feel like, as you said, in this capitalist society that we live in, we build up the day when we meet that goal as like the top. Like there's so much building up to that day. But it's so true, but it's so fleeting. And then it's like, once you meet that goal, it's like, okay, what's next? What's the next thing?
And how often have we talked with a client where they got to that day that had all that build up, and then it was like it didn't really live up to the hype.
Totally. I mean, I even just had that recently with passing my clinical exam, because that's just even before I became a counseling student, right? That's obviously what they're talking about. Okay, you're going to get your LPC and then your LCPC. And so that's already the end goal, right? Not the end goal, but you know what I mean? The big thing. And when it happened, I was studying and everything. I got into the exam. Obviously, there was so much relief when I passed because I was like, great, I don't have to retake this and I don't have to drop a couple hundred to retake it again. But I remember being in my own therapy and my therapist was like, oh my God, how are you feeling? And I honestly was just sort of numb. And it wasn't really until she was talking to me about it that I was like, oh yeah, this is something that I'm expected to be very excited about. And again, don't get me wrong, I was very pleased, I was very happy, I was very relieved. But it's like, but nothing has really changed. Like, the world just keeps going and my clients are still here and I'm still this same therapist. I'm still growing, right? I'm still learning things. But yeah, it wasn't this like life-changing, insane thing that happened just as a result of passing this exam. So yeah, that just stood out to me as like a personal account that, happened recently.
That's such a great reflection. This whole conversation really takes me back to my time as an actress, because the times when you do reach your goals, especially in that line of work, are so few and far between, if you ever do book anything. And so there were a lot of like acting coaches, I guess you'd say, that would always be like, you have to enjoy the work itself, the grind itself of auditioning, of creating your own material, of just being in these little storefront plays, on the way to your big goals. Because that's the work of an actor. The work isn't like booking the big series regular, and it's in the day-to-day of being an actor, which is where I sort of got caught up, because I realized, okay, I don't like this grind. I actually don't like having to audition all the time and like throw together these like really quick turnaround self tapes and never hearing back and putting in all this work. And but that's part of the trap, is like, you really need to be a person who enjoys the day-to-day auditioning, because that is the actor. That is the craft of it. That's the journey part. So yeah.
And how hard it is to try to convince ourselves or anyone else to enjoy that, because it sort of asks us to embrace the mundanity. It asks us to embrace the toil of
Yeah.
life. Who the hell wants mundanity and toil? We want romance. We want pageantry. Why the hell are you dragging me back to toil?
Yeah.
But I think that there's an inevitability to it that really is part of our job, is to be just so real with people about the real situation that we are all really in. I think there's a Buddhist phrase that goes something like, much of the world's suffering comes from failing to see it as it is. Because if I see it as better than it is, I'm going to experience that disconnect at some point, realizing what it actually is.
Right.
And if I experience it as less than it is, then I'm failing to enjoy what's actually here. That's the stop and smell the roses mentality. And truly, our charge is to recognize what's really going on, where we're really at, and really meet it as it really is now. And I think, too, about the idea that we are probably always, in any given moment in time, we are a person with memories and hopes, or maybe fears. But that means that we're carrying with us some shit from our past. We're holding within us some predictions of the future. And we're really just kind of moving through time as that over and over and over again. The content of some of those memories changes. The content of some of those hopes and fears change. But at the end of the day, I'm carrying with me right now and tomorrow and 2 years from now, hopefully, memories and fears and hopes. That's life. Life is to have hope. Life is to have fear. Life is to have memories, good and bad, pleasant and unpleasant, which means that life is now. It's just in the present moment.
Yeah. I think something I've really come to appreciate and learn just in becoming a therapist is embracing neutrality, which sounds kind of sad when you just say it like that. But what you were saying, Adam, it's like if you were imagining the world to be this lovely place, rose-colored lenses, yada, 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 yeah, you are going to be hit in the face with, there's a lot of despair and brutality. But yeah, also you don't necessarily need to be constantly in the muck and knee deep in the muck to embrace, or just, yeah, like it kind of just like that idea of like acceptance. And that's something too, where it's like, I think even the idea of like hopes, it's like, okay, instead of hoping for something, can we just use curiosity? Like even what we're saying with goals and everything of like, okay, I hope to get to this point, or I hope to reach this milestone or reach self-actualization. Could you ask more questions about how to get there? Or could you use more curiosity about it? I don't know. I just think that's something that I've really learned more becoming a therapist, that it's not about like the dimples and rainbows and sunshine. It's like just taking it in as it is. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm kind of jumping around.
It very much does. And I think this also, I'll jump with you, but I think in jumping around on it, there's, I think, a couple of, or many different perspectives on regarding how to do psychotherapy, how to think about the work that we're doing. And I personally try to really embrace the contradictions, because on the one hand, this idea of hope very much does help people, if you will, feel better, feel direction, feel purpose. I hope, therefore I try. And on the other hand, especially somebody practicing from more of an acceptance and commitment focused lens, will say, what are you doing with that hope? You're telling stories. Why are you hoping for anything? We're just be curious about it. Just be open to it. And what I love about this pursuit is that, in a way, those are absolutely contradictory viewpoints. And I think both true, or at least both useful. It defies logic to some degree to say hope is good, but also don't do it. But it helps, but don't. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that we can, especially in our approach at Delve, like we are open to like pulling from different perspectives and being like, no, like both of these viewpoints are valid, actually. And we can see things both ways. I guess my question would be, like if we have a client who's really they're pursuing maybe, let's say, like a music career, and they're really in the muck of it, and they're getting rejected left and right, and it's really tough. How can we convince them to enjoy the process and not just, be like, well, I'll be happy when I get this record deal?
You want to take that one first, Colleen?
Yeah, I'm taking it in still. I think it's because I have several clients, not several, I have had several, but I have some currently who are in the arts, and this is something that they're struggling with right now, because obviously there's so much passion in what they're doing. And in that profession, it's so competitive and it's so hard to find a line of work and a position that's going to pay you. And so it's hard. I feel like I kind of get stuck with that as well, where it's like, yeah, how do I hold space for that part? As we're talking about, it's like we do need a certain amount of security and finances and everything to survive, to be a person. And also, I try to really look at the whys of why they're choosing this and why they continue to pursue this line of work. And I think sometimes that can be met with, kind of what we're talking about, where it's like, well, yeah, I love it. And I love being able to just express myself through this and be able to put a lot of identity, I think, comes into this. But it's hard. And so, yeah, I don't know if I have a very concrete answer to this. So I'm curious, like, if we expand it a little bit more, maybe more things will come up for you guys. But I get stuck with that a lot, of kind of how to offer specific help with it. So I think I do just offer a lot of like validating and identity and asking questions about their whys and their intentions.
I think that's a really good poll, because at the end of the day, I think it's up to the individual to decide whether they mean to continue to work on this or not.
Yeah.
And I will tend to challenge on the front of, if you're doing this because one day you're going to get all the glory, I truly think you're choosing toil, and you're choosing suffering. You're allowed to choose toil and suffering. But I think that isn't the experience of living your present day life. It's living a fantasy life in the future. It will never come to fruition in exactly that way. Even if you meet all your goals, even if you get everything that you've ever desired, it's still going to be a little different than you expect, no question. Because none of us are, licensed shamans yet. I also think about the question of, whether you decide to continue to pursue it is a matter of personal choice and ambition. If you decide it's a priority, then you're going to work on it. And in that way, do we need to enjoy the present moment, or do we need to just live in the present moment? Because frankly, sometimes working on your passions sucks.
Yeah.
And we hate it. I've been deep into the improv world for about 2 years now, which, if anybody's ever done improv, knows that that's not enough time to be good. So it's a lot of go up on stage in front of people that you respect and fail in front of them.
Yeah.
Or go up in front of people who have bet on you and fail to live up to an expectation that you in your mind have imagined they have for you. Go up in front of people who you want to impress and fail in front of them. Bring people who respect you, and have them, one, watch you act like a moron, but then two, fail to be funny, which is supposed to be the thing. Maybe it is, but anyway, we could debate whether improv is supposed to be funny. That's not a good, air quotes, good experience. So why do it? But then, of course, why do anything? I mean, failure is a prerequisite to growth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man. Yeah, what comes up for me in this conversation is just connecting back to your why you're pursuing this in the first place. It makes me think of a quote by a philosopher. I can't remember the philosopher's name at the moment, but it's he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how.
Oh, yeah.
And it just makes me think of like in those times when you're really deep in the mud and in the trenches and you're really going through it, like connecting back to your why. I mean, I think of like just humans in history, people that had things to live for, to strive for, whether that's like saving somebody they love, or I don't know, taking up some like insanely difficult plight because it was so important to them and they simply must.
Mm. Well, and it also goes back to, I think, I mean, it's a beautiful quote and I absolutely love it. And I think this idea of reconnecting to the why also embraces our storytelling element. Like, for whatever reason, this weird little collection of neurons seems to do this thing called storytelling. It seems to desperately want to do it, wants to consume it, wants to share it, so much so that we're going to make a podcast in part about a story that was told. But it's so fascinating to me that we are beings that view life, ours and others, in this kind of story-esque way. And the why is ultimately the crux of the story that we're trying to tell about ourselves and our life's path. I'm doing this because begins a tale.
Yeah. Yeah. And that makes me think of the original topic. It's like less about the outcome, the what, and more focusing on the why and maybe even the how of it all.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful way to wrap up that conversation. I just thought that quote was so, it just hit me in the work that we're doing with our clients and focusing on process versus outcome. So thank you for going through that little journey with me.
Thank you, Allie.
Yeah. Adam, you have another quote on the whiteboard above your head.
I'm trying to change these out weekly, but I don't always get to it.
It says, "Everything was fine until you hit me with reality." Ooh.
So a client actually said this to me in session. I think in training, a lot of trainee therapists really struggle with this idea that the client comes in a good mood, they're happy, they're having a good day, and then they talk to us for an hour and they leave and they feel worse. And a trainee therapist would be like, "I broke them. I've been watching Shrinking, and in one of the episodes, one of the therapists does quip that essentially, like, I feel you come in and you talk a lot. Now I feel worse. Is that what therapy is? It's like sometimes it really is. I understand the pull for people to want to feel better. It's just, it goes back to the realities of life, that sometimes it feels bad, and sometimes to address the things that have happened in our life or are the things that are currently miring us can involve some degree of temporary discomfort. It's okay for us to go there. It's okay for us to live there. Our clients will be fine. We'll be fine. Everybody can generally handle this. I do, of course, when I'm working with clients that maybe experience something like non-suicidal self-injury or thoughts of self-harm or something of that nature, we certainly want to be more careful about the ways in which we activate this sort of mentality. But that's not to say that we can't do it. It's just, again, to kind of like build around a comfortability with the unpleasant emotions and a willingness to dig into the things that are difficult for us. Because at the end of the day, I had a former supervisor, Mike Pietris, say that a lot of what we're trying to teach our clients is how to open and close pain. So a client that comes in feeling good and then starts to feel worse has practiced the art of opening pain. And then a client that feels pain and leaves the session and then goes about their day and grabs lunch and talks to their friends has practiced the art of closing pain. It hurts, but it doesn't do anything else on its own.
Yeah, I love that. I wrap up my sessions with summarizing everything that we talk about. And I just ask, how are you feeling? Is anything sort of standing out to you from our conversation today? And I always laugh because I feel my clients, there's sort of this expectation, again, a social norm to be like, yeah, I'm feeling good. But I always laugh when somebody's like, yeah, I'm feeling awful. That was terrible. I'm feeling really bad. And so I always urge, especially when I know I've had a really tough session, when clients end it with saying like, yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm like, are you? It's okay if you're not. But again, I think it looks at what we're talking about. Like a lot of times it is going to get worse before it gets, I don't even want to say better because there's no guarantee of that, but it's, you're being hit with reality, you're being hit with awarenesses. And a lot of times that is synonymous with pain and discomfort.
Yeah. But I think like that's where like some of the most impactful work comes from, is when you are in that like rock bottom state. And like that's where we can really flush out what's going on and process. And I think that's where therapy is all about. So
Yeah. Totally.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Colleen.
Thank you.
Enjoyed our discussion. If you want to reach out to Colleen or me or Adam or any of our therapists at Delve Psychotherapy, you can head on over to delvepsych.com. That is DELVEPSYCH.com. And we will see you next week for another episode.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.